I got everything covered.
You all rise to the pledge. Chris, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces and also for Councilman Lawson's father who passed. Thank you.
Joseph Troiano, please.
Hi, thank you all for your time. I just want to say I've lived in this town for 39 years, and I couldn't be happier with the way things are going. Mayor Bass has done a fantastic job. I'm in full support of him. Everything's going well. Taxes are low, property values are up. We have a helicopter, and we have a semi-pro football team. What could be better, right? As a parent, I'm very happy with the Riverfront Revitalization Project. I think that'll be a great thing for this town. My daughter can't wait to go ice skating, so that'll be exciting. Just so you know, it's not all happy news. I'm not thrilled with some of the decisions the Board of Ed has made. I think we could use some new faces on there. And I know Sal is up for nomination and will be taking a vote tonight. He volunteered to join, and I just want to say that thank you for volunteering, and I know that people whose opinions I respect support him, so I just want to lend my support as well. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Joe, can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, Joseph Triano, 9 Pheasant Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody's going to have to help me with this last name here. Please come down.
Oh, boy.
Thank you for having me, and my pleasure to speak to you all. My name is Sal Winkowitz. I live in New Milford for about 20 years. And the way I want to start is basically, typically, you know, about the leadership and how they lead is through the crisis. So as you all know, we had a pandemic last year. As a New Milford member and New Milford resident, the DPW, well, I live off of the Hickok-Crossbrook Road. The guys were working day in, day out, fixing the roads. Absolutely wonderful job. So basically, I was so pleased to see the works, and I'm driving around in New Milford. I was so pleased to see the roads fixed and the job being done. Even though we had a pandemic and a crisis and everything else, I didn't see any slowness in the public work. So DPW is absolutely one of the best guys we can definitely go to. Thanks to Mayor Bass, thanks to you, council members, for a great leadership in this town, and I'm really pleased to live in this country. I mean, in this town as well. Appreciate it.
Sal,
Thank you.
Sorry, can you state your full name and address, please?
I'm sorry?
Full name and address, please.
6 Winty Night Drive, and the name is Sal, S-A-L, and the last name is Rinkowitz. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Paul Murphy, please.
Good evening, Town Council members, Mayor Bass, and the public present. I come before the council tonight for the first time in 30 years that I've lived here. Although 9 generations of ancestors may have at one time or another stopped by Town Hall. I wish to thank the entire council, both Democrat, Republican, and unaffiliated, if there ever anyone here, for all they've done in the town so far in the past 3 years. Our bridges, our roads, our parks are all being improved, and this past week we've taken steps to remove the contaminated steel from the brass mill. But the main reason for being here is for the council tonight discussing the possible approval and appointment of Sal Rinkowitz to the town council. I've known Sal for several years and can say to the council he would be more rounded by his appointment. He brings to the council a wealth of knowledge from outside of New Milford and a view through the eyes of persons that have seen life under different governments. Diversity is about what makes each of us unique and includes our backgrounds, our personality, life experiences, and beliefs, all the things that make us up for what we are. It is a combination of our differences that shape our approach to the world around us. I firmly believe that Sal would be an outstanding member to the council, and once knowing his diversity, surely you will all agree. Thank you.
Paul, can you just state your address? I think you said your name, but you state your address.
Paul Murphy, 15 Buckboard Lane.
Thank you, Paul. That's the end of the list, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Walter. Katie?
Okay, item number 3, consent agenda. Motion to approve items 3A, B, and C.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I'd just like to
Okay.
make a comment, Mayor. The youth agency, item 3C, this is in regard, they would like to comment on this, that they have a grant for $25,000 from the Connecticut State Department of Education. It's through a summer enrichment expansion grant. And these funds are going to be placed into their revenue account, 10441-900-43307, with $12,600 to remain in the account to cover student scholarships. The additional $12,400 they are requesting to be moved to the expense account number 1044190058923 to cover transportation and staffing costs. Transportation costs will be $6,800, staffing costs will be $5,600.
We had a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Item number 6 is an update from Dr. Jeremy Levin.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Levin. I'm 31 Hine Road, New Milford, resident 34 years. Thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing me to attend today and to give the report in person.
Dr.
What a great
Levin.
pleasure it is to see you all. Today's report is fairly brief. We'll focus on just a handful of important issues. I'll start with the cases. We know that the United States has seemingly plateaued, but that's not the case. We're seeing it jump up now in a number of the states where we mentioned before vaccine levels are below 40%. This is not good. Worse than that, the people who are being admitted to the ICUs are all young, and they are the unvaccinated. Those who are dying are the unvaccinated, overwhelmingly. But it's not only those parts of the country. We saw an uptick of about 10%. We've been here before. We know how to deal with this. I think, frankly, it's just disappointing that those parts of the country have been resistant. Having said that, we got 160 million Americans fully vaccinated. We're on track to getting at least 50% of the population done, which will be fabulous. There are well over that, nearly 60%, which have had one dose. We need, as I've said before, to get to 70% to be effective and to have national immunity. The states that are behind, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Wyoming, are those that are suffering. They could learn a lot, unfortunately, from what you've done here, Mayor and Council, which has been fantastic. I think it's striking as I reviewed the country to note that this town and our state has done better than most and could set an example. It's a pity that others have not listened to that. We talked about variants. I think this is very important for me to bring this back up again. I talked previously about the Delta variant and the Delta Plus variant, which has spread now all over the world and is well into America. The greatest concern for all of us is that the country that takes this most seriously, Israel, has decided to take very significant steps in that regard. They have instituted and are planning to provide boosters to the entire nation. They were previously vaccinated with Pfizer, with the Pfizer vaccine, in addition to which they have chosen to start to rethink about masks in certain areas which are hotspots. A very active process in Israel. I think there's while I investigated this, having learnt about it last week, a couple good pieces of news on this. Number one, the vaccines that we currently have are effective against the Delta variant. That's good news. What we do know also is that the immunity appears to diminish, like other vaccines, over a period of approximately 8 months or thereabouts. We're not exactly sure, but that's fairly common with most vaccines. You do see a diminution. Now we're beginning to get real hard data. That means that as you make decisions about boosting, it will be fairly logical and we'll know when to do it and how to do it. I would say that the boosters that have been done in Israel and the studies which have yet to be published and will be published show with absolute certainty that the boosters give you a very significant response and are able to defeat pretty much everything. No person to date who's had the vaccine in Israel has died from a Delta variant. You should know that so it's all good news with regard to the vaccines. And I think the message that we hear from that is simply to be prepared, to think through how one would handle this in the future should it come to us, as it probably and might well do. Now there is a continued concern in this country about boosters. We've heard from the CDC on one hand that they're not necessary. On the others, we're hearing from at least sub rosa. I can tell you factually, we're hearing from the companies that you will need them. I think there's that sort of discontinuity between the two messages is simply due to two different imperatives. Number one, the CDC wants as many Americans as possible to get vaccinated. So let's leave aside the boosters, go and vaccinate. That's what they're trying to message. On the other hand, the companies have data and they will bring that data out over the next several weeks, showing that in fact the need for the boosters and when that will occur. There is a lot of good feeling about the fact that the boosters, the mRNA vaccines, not necessarily the J&J, AstraZeneca, or Sputnik 5 or the others, they all believe that these boosters will be effective. There are slightly different preparations going on in both those companies. In Pfizer, the preparation is primarily for a standard mRNA vaccine, very similar to what we've had in the past. In the case of Moderna, it looks like they're doing a bit of a combination vaccine it's not really two different vaccines, it's the same vaccine, but targeted using the information they have from the original South African variant. Didn't have a name then, it's not a Delta or otherwise, and the original vaccine. In addition to that, we will have hard data on when to give it, how to give it, and I think it's wise just to keep it in the back of the mind, be prepared, because I think it likely will come at some stage. Of note, this is normal for vaccines, normal. You need a booster the next year, some 10 years on. We just don't have enough information to say when, but we will have that. Now, there is one item that I do need to bring to your attention, and you probably, knowing how knowledgeable you all are, you will probably, to preempt the question, there is a new variant called Lambda. Lambda is coming out of Peru, and Lambda, the evidence from Peru is a little bit concerning, but I want to put it in context. About 2 million people in Peru have tested positive, about 200,000 have died. Now, on the face of that, the actual figure is 9.3% more mortality. That's a very high mortality. On the face of it, that would be completely worrying. However, let us step back from that and ask the question, do we understand truly what does the altitude in Peru mean? It's very different from here. Number two, what are the age groups? We don't have the full data on that. And number three, what is the medical care that those people are getting? So I know this is on the minds of several people. I've had a lot of questions today on this, but we need to get more information before we worry. There is also, again, the initial evidence that our vaccinations will stop it. So again, it looks like the mRNA vaccines are demonstrating their power. With that, I'll stop. I don't wish to take more time, but I think the good news is the vaccines do work against Delta. They diminish over time, likely as we should prepare for a booster in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any council members have any questions for Dr. Levin? Mary Ann?
Hi, Dr. Levin. Yes, it's good to see you in person.
Likewise.
Off to Sweden. I have a question about the Johnson & Johnson. There's been new information coming out about an increase in Guillain-Barré. And I know, I think a lot of people know that the flu vaccine also runs that risk of Guillain-Barré. I've taken care of patients who have been vaccinated with flu and developed Guillain-Barré. So is the percentage seem to be any higher than getting a flu vaccine?
No, it's about 100 patients out of approximately 18.9 million vaccinations. So that's the figure. That's slightly above background that you see in the population generally. Mm-hmm. So it's simply a matter of monitoring it. But you are correct. Flu vaccines and actually other vaccines can give this. Anything that uses an adenovirus as a vehicle to transport the vaccine in, it does result. It can result. It's tiny though.
Thank you.
Chris?
Good to finally meet you, Dr. Levin.
Good to meet you as well.
In terms of variants, would it be a true statement to say that until the globe reaches herd immunity or thereabouts, these variants are going to keep popping up?
Absolutely. This is why this virus doesn't know borders, and you've got two choices. You either fight it where it's going on, or you expect that it's going to come to you.
Right.
And I think the message here is that trade policy in the United States needs to adapt to allow us to manufacture here and export there. There was a large amount of attempts to subvert IP and to go and put that into other countries as a means of accelerating access to vaccines. It was a very mistaken approach. We've seen this already with Lambda appearing literally 4 weeks after that discussion. We could have manufactured additional vaccines in this country, invested here, and exported out. I sincerely hope that that will be the policy going forward.
So we're not allowed to export except for certain circumstances?
Michael, right now we are allowed, but it's very small amounts. And the amounts that are required for the world is about 3 billion doses right now. So, but we can do that. There's little doubt the manufacturing plants that are being run by Pfizer and Moderna can definitely do that.
And one other question on the boosters. I know when they were developing the vaccine and the trials they went through, typically 30,000, I think, people in each trial. Are they doing that same process for boosters and the safety of that? So it's the same
Yes, it's the same process.
Okay.
They have a much better advantage now because we have all the testing systems set up. And then you've got 163 million people who've been vaccinated. So we have real life experience on how to study, does the vaccine work or not, and does the booster work or not. So the safety of these vaccines is incontrovertible at this stage, and I'm certain that the booster, whether you have a booster on top of an mRNA booster on top of a Pfizer, if it's a Moderna on top of Pfizer, if it's a Moderna or a Pfizer on top of J&J or AstraZeneca, I think we'll have the data very solidly in hand before we start doing the vaccinations.
Great, thank you.
Tom?
I just have a comment. Dr. Levin, it's nice to meet you in person finally. As most of the public and the council members, Dr. Levin has been with us for many meetings and sitting through some of the council meetings, but I wanted to thank you for your knowledge, and we're fortunate to have someone of your knowledge local in town to be informative and to help us out with the questions that we have. So I just wanted to thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It's not helping you out, it's helping us out. I'm part of the town, wouldn't do otherwise. Thank you, but I appreciate that.
Mike?
I just was wondering your comment. You said we're approaching 60% with one shot. If you take the people that have gotten it with natural immunities, does that approach the 70% that we want in this country, or is it still not quite?
Mike, you actually asked that before, so I went back to look at it. It is going to approach that. The problem is that on what we're seeing with these variants is when they overwhelm the reduction in either your natural immunity that you got from your first infection or the immunity that you got from the vaccination. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole at times. You get yourself vaccinated or you get the disease, and then your immunity appears to tail off, and that you'll need another booster. So it's going to be...
So if you have immunity from naturally and you get a single shot, does that kind of put you at the same level as someone that has the 2 shots, or there's no cut and dry. It's a lot of...
There's no cut and dry, but most people are advising those who've had it to have the 2 shot and then to have a booster at the later date.
I was just looking at some studies, and I know a lot of these studies aren't peer-reviewed yet because they're so new, but I know the Cleveland hospital system had done one, and the regular immunity, the vaccination, and then also having it in immunity, we're not seeing duplicate. And actually, none of the people that had just plain immunity from getting COVID have gotten it again, whereas a few people got mild cases that had the vaccine. So, and I know without the variant being in this country, I was just more curious because I know a lot of people they gotten it, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I just was curious in your opinion.
I think that's probably an unwise approach from my own personal. If I would advise all my family members, absolutely, even if they had it and one of them did have it, to have the complete course, which she did, and when boosters come to have it again. But that's for my family, and that's what I'm telling them. And were I to have had COVID, I would have had the 2 course. I would not, to be very clear, I would not take the Sputnik 5 or the Sinovac, or likely until I saw more data of the AstraZeneca at this stage. However, AstraZeneca is of a different class to the first 2, but I would most certainly have taken a vaccine.
Any other questions for Dr. Levin?
Pete, I just got one quick one. A lot of people are going to start going back to work soon. A lot of younger kids are going to start going back to, and then we're going to have a lot of kids going back to school, obviously the end of August and September. What are your thoughts about the spike level? Now you're going to have the interactions of a lot of people that work from home, and then they're going to go back to work, whether it's down in the city or in other avenues where they are. What do you think? Do you think there'll be a spike, another spike?
I think it's almost inevitable. But the difference with that is that I think we've learned how to handle it. In other words, I think it's not on, if one's in a crowded environment that isn't well ventilated, I think it's still wise to wear protection, to take protective actions. That, unfortunately, is going to be our norm going forward until we actually crush this virus completely, and I mean across the nation, because you don't know who's going to be meeting you in New York. I myself have traveled on an airplane. I find it perfect. I have to do it, and I will do it. I'm not going to, but I'm taking extraordinary cautious. I'm very cautious about it. I wear a mask all the time throughout that. But that's my personal approach to it, and so far it's been successful, and I'm vaccinated, so I feel good about that. But I'm not being foolish about it. So when the kids go back, which is really important, and we all go back to normal work, so I think we do need to think about ventilation and taking protective measures where there's no ventilation.
Any other questions for Dr. Levin? Mary Jane?
Yeah, just one more. Considering that a lot of people got vaccinated early, like January, February, they're going to be coming into the fall, like 8 months. Vaccine's going to be waning. when do you think we're going to know about the booster? Because
Mary Jane, I'm one of those, probably like many in this room. The way I've talked to my family is I said I want to see the data before we go forward, but we will definitely, my guessing, best guesstimate, is it'll be late fall.
late fall.
Yep.
So we could be possibly at a little more risk, the general population that's been vaccinated, as we get into late fall because the vaccine is waning. Immunity.
We'll actually have much more information soon. The reason why I say soon, is that many people who were vaccinated in the clinical trials have now had a year plus.
Okay.
So they've had much more time. So I know that they're looking at that group and asking the question, how are they reacting? And some of those have had boosters as well. So it could be within weeks we'll know this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put too much concern if the CDC suddenly says, now we're going to go to boosters. I just wouldn't. They're dealing with real-time data. Just so long as we're prepared.
Right.
I'm actually super encouraged by the early data that it works against the Delta.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Levin? Again, as always, Dr. Levin, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for updating the council.
Item 5, I'd like to move to approve the request from the Health Department adding a line to their budget as determined by the Director of Finance.
Second.
Any discussion on the line item for the health department budget? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Next.
Item 5B will be an update from our Health Director, Lisa Morrissey.
Lisa?
Evening. Good evening. I feel like every time I get up here, I'm hoarse. So I apologize. We actually just adopted a couple of new pets, and then I discovered 48 hours later I'm allergic. So I have a lot of clarity in my future. Dr. Levin did a really great job of doing an update, so I will cut a lot of that out of mine. I'll just add a couple of pieces to that, and then I'll go to the local update. Pfizer Biotech actually met with, they were meeting with the FDA today, so we're looking to see what's going to happen. You probably already saw in the media that last week the CDC and the FDA released a joint statement stating that no booster is necessary at this time, but the pharmaceutical companies are talking with them and showing the real-time data that supports that, and also using some of the data from Israel, as Dr. Levin had indicated. So what does that mean for us here locally in New Milford? So I met with the mayor last week, and again today's early the week, it's Monday, and talking a little bit about what the health department is doing to prepare for that. We actually have already been talking to our volunteer pool and our paid vaccinators to look to see what availability will look like this fall for that. What we're actually preparing for, we're making the assumption that we're going to have to vaccinate the 2 to 11-year-olds. We're anticipating that approval will come late summer, early fall. Boosters will come, and we'll be doing flu vaccine. So we've been working with our vaccinators to make sure that we have adequate levels of staffing available, and taking a look at the number of vaccinators that are comfortable vaccinating young children. One of the things that I've been talking to the hospital about, as well as our local pediatric practices and family practices, and pretty much anyone that will listen to me, is that we still have a very low number of family practices and pediatric offices that are actually vaccinating with COVID-19. The other local health departments in our area are not vaccinating. We're actually one of the last agencies that's still vaccinating. So my concern is that in the fall, there's not going to be enough providers for families to turn to. So we've been just looking internally to make sure that we're providing adequate staffing for that and looking for support. So if we're working with a practice that isn't vaccinating on their own, getting them to partner with us and bring their staff to us so that we can continue to meet that need. But we don't want to own the entire project. We want it to be a community collective. And again, looking at what's coming down the road, as Dr. Levin said, we're preparing for the spike. It's an eventuality. We're not talking about if, we're looking at when. And if you look at it now, I feel like I have deja vu because I had this conversation with Pete maybe 6-8 weeks ago when I said, when we get to July 4th, I'm anticipating we're going to see another uptick because last year everybody was jumping and dancing for joy in May and in June, and then it was July, and we're like, uh-oh, the numbers are starting to go up a little bit. So it feels like that is happening. We saw a very similar thing last year when it came back to school. We're starting to have the conversations with our neighboring school districts and our school districts here in New Milford, including our private schools, to talk about what other plans are. So we're partnering with our public and private school partners to offer COVID-19 vaccinations for people who have elected not to get vaccinated yet or not to have their children vaccinated yet. Some of our private schools are mandating vaccines, so they're partnering with us to bring their student populations to us. For the first time, the health department here in New Milford is also going to be partnering with the schools to provide flu vaccines at the schools for students. So for those of you who are not familiar with the acute care system in the country or in the state, let me tell you something about flu season. In any given flu season, the hospitals are this close to being overrun. When we have a really bad flu season, it's very typical for the hospital system to reach back out to their local health department and the state health department to say, hey, we need people to not show up at the ED for every boo-boo. We need them to come only for emergencies because they have so many people and they don't have enough beds. So New Milford Health Department, like all of our other counterparts, are preparing and planning for that. We've been developing some PSAs that you'll be seeing going out talking about getting vaccinated for the flu, getting COVID-19 vaccinations, how to tell the difference, between when you need to go to the hospital versus when you should make a phone call to your doctor or see the urgent care, and really making sure that we are layering our coverage so that this fall we're not overrun by illness. And that also means working with our school districts, because one of the things that we saw last year is that it's really hard to tell when your child should be home. And I think most of you know I got a lot of kids at my house, so I really understand and sympathize with parents and when this piece. So we're developing things like that and working with the school district for that piece. I actually met with Pete last week, and we started to talk about, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there are fewer and fewer places not just to get vaccinated, but also to get tested. So we're down to just the urgent care here in New Milford. So we just applied to the state. Our application went in on Friday so that we can do COVID-19 testing through the health department, and we're really going to utilize that for our local school districts. So it'll be for New Milford Public Schools first, and for people, not for when you're doing leisure travel and you need to get a clearance, to get on a plane or get off the plane or to go back to work, but more so for people who, to go back to school, go back to work, and you have to have that clearance. This is going to be done without a cost to the taxpayers. We're going to be utilizing a variety of sources. So there are a couple of state contracts that allow for the laboratory services of that, and we'll be billing private insurance. So that's one of the projects that we're working on as well. We're just, like I said, we're trying to layer to make sure that we have options. When I talk about the diminished numbers for testing, over the last 10 days, we only had 97 people in town get tested for COVID-19, which you could look at two ways. You could say, wow, that's really great that people don't feel like they have COVID-19, so they're not going to get tested. Or you can take the pessimistic health director approach, but wow, people really aren't going to get tested. What's happening? So one thing I can tell you is that I did see that right before July 4th, people we had a slight uptick in the number of people who were getting tested, and they were asymptomatic people who actually tested negative. So that tells me that people knew that they were going to be participating in gatherings, so they went to go and get tested. So that small number that we had, like less than 100, still is a lot better than when we were. There's some weeks where we only have 10 people go get tested, or 14 people in the whole town get tested. So I wanted to highlight that. When we talk about our vaccination numbers across the state and across the country, sometimes it feels disconnected to the local. So I'll share those numbers with you as well. So right now, as of today, we have about 44% of our 12 to 15-year-olds are vaccinated, 65% of our 16 through 44-year-olds, 75% of our 45 to 64, and you probably heard me say this before, we have over 100% of our 65 by the way that the state tabulates our population. The key piece in there, really, I think that's worth highlighting. We're not really seeing that many grown-ups initiating vaccination anymore in New Milford. What do I mean by grown-ups? So people in our age group. So people in my age group who are in that, they're young parents, they have parents that are in high school that age, they're not going to get vaccinated. Pretty much everyone in that age group, you know, that 25 to 45, 48, if they wanted to get vaccinated in New Milford, they got vaccinated. We're seeing very few people initiate vaccination in that group each week. So last week, for example, only 7 people between 25 and 45 got vaccinated in New Milford. Where are we seeing our gains? We're still seeing it in our 12 to 15-year-olds, and we're seeing it in the 16 to 24-year-olds. So our young adults and our teens, I keep making the joke, and I tell people that what we're going to see in the fall, we're going to see our college students who they have the mandatory vaccination. We're going to see uptick in there, those vaccination numbers. We're going to see it in the parents whose kids now are mandatory, so there's no more option to do virtual, so now you have to go back to school. So I tease my own friends whose children weren't getting vaccinated. I said, you were waiting to see if my kid grew a tail before you got your kid vaccinated. There's no tail, no horns, they're okay. So we're going to see some more vaccination numbers grow in that group. So that's where I'm really expecting to see those numbers. At our own clinic, I had a conversation with the State Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security in regards to what our plans were, because we're like one of the last municipalities that are still in the game, and I was looking for some more support from them instead of them trying to demobilize and take away resources. And I said, when we first started doing this, my clinics were almost exclusively New Milford. Then we started getting other towns because you asked me to take other towns, and we did, with welcoming arms, because we knew that the impact from other communities impacted us here locally in New Milford. We did that. I said, now here we are, you know, going into the middle of July, and our clinic scope is changing. So what we're seeing now is that people as far away as Salisbury, so going all the way up to the top of the northwest corner, and we're seeing people from down in Reading. And the reason for that is because there are no other new municipal health departments that get vaccinated at. The hospitals are not vaccinating, and the federally qualified health centers pulled out on June 30th. So with fewer opportunities, you literally are going to one of your retail pharmacies, or you end up at New Milford Health Department's clinic. So it's changing the scope. So I was talking to them about that and looking for them, not just for assistance when we talk about keeping the things level as far as equipment and staffing and those types of support for them, but also in changing that conversation about other municipalities, making sure that they have the proper preparations in place for this fall, because right now, not just are we vaccinating people from the surrounding towns, we're also providing vaccines to providers in other towns. So there were a couple of pediatric groups. For example, there's one in Ridgefield where we're ordering vaccine and we're transferring to Ridgefield. We're ordering vaccine and we're transferring to practices as far as Hartford. So we are not only vaccinating, but we're also a supplier. I said I'm now in the pharmaceutical business because it's all supplying to me. At least it's got the vaccine, who wants them? So we're doing things like that. And again, when you look at the area, we were the only health department in our area that was vaccinating at times with 3 different vaccine products, and it really was to make sure that we were matching people to the vaccine. So while we recognized that, you know, any vaccine that was available to you was the best vaccine, people had distinct preferences, and we really were trying to do that in an effort to boost those numbers. And going into the fall, what we're planning on doing, we're going to be in the same boat. So we're going to be offering the same number of vaccines. We'll have them all available. Plus, we're going to have 4 different types of flu vaccine available to people, so that we're really promoting that choice and trying to make sure that we're giving people every opportunity to protect themselves and their family. I think those are the big pieces. So I don't want to leave on a doom and gloom. So on a positive note, I'll say that our COVID-19 numbers, did I knock hard enough? Have been really, really great. We've had less than 5 new cases over the last month. So that is a big deal. Very happy about that. And again, just promoting those messaging about staying home when you're sick. Practice that hand hygiene. If you're going to be in a crowd, wear a mask. And as I keep saying to my friends and family, if I really don't know if you're engaging in high-risk activities, and to me, high-risk activities means you're going out partying in crowds and hanging out in the bars, and I don't know your vaccination status, I'm probably wearing my mask. And just being kind and respectful of everyone's choices. I always find it very disheartening whenever I hear people bullying over someone's decision to wear a mask or not wear a mask. Just remember, if we see people wearing a mask, we don't know if they have an immunocompromised person in their life. We don't know if they themselves are immunocompromised. So just be kind and respect everyone's decision, whether it is to wear a mask or to not wear a mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Mary Jane?
Sure.
The over-the-counter COVID tests, what is the accuracy of those tests, do you know?
It depends on the test. So there is no uniform. They're all different. I will say the Binex Now, which is the least expensive one that you can get, it's an antigen test. The 2-pack is $26. They're the same ones that they're using at the clinics that the state has sponsoring when you do the rapid test. And they're the same ones that were used in schools for rapid testing in schools. I have 6 boxes left on the shelf of my house because I picked up a whole bunch from CVS because now I'm treating that kind of like, you got the sniffles, you're looking kind of suspicious. I'm swabbing them kids inside the bathroom.
It's called what?
Binex, yeah. Binax. Yeah, you can ask my husband how he feels about me swabbing in the bathroom. So they all differ. You can also pick up the PCR test at CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, and Costco. So if you need a PCR test, you can actually pick it. You can keep them in your house. And the way that the PCR over-the-counters work, you swab it, you drop it in the box, you put it in your mailbox or bring it to the post office, and you get the results back in about 72 hours. And the ones like the Binex Now are the antigen tests, and you get the results from the comfort of your home in 20 minutes, assuming you follow directions and you get a good swab.
Yeah, right. Oh, good. That's good to know. I think it's good for the
You're
public to
welcome.
know that.
Any other questions? Chris?
First of all, thank you, Lisa, and you and your team for the great job you've done, along with Councilwoman Francis and her militia of
Yes, she's got an
volunteers.
army of volunteers.
One question, when you go into the schools, whether it's a flu vaccine or COVID vaccine, your system's in place to make sure that there's parental permission for all of that, there's no issue there?
Yeah, we have, and I really do invite you, if you guys have not been down to the clinic, to come take a look, or if you wanted to just experience it, you can go on the website. So we have several layers to ensure that we are getting consent. So all appointments go through the website, whether it's one of our staff that are navigating it for you, you're doing it on your own, and right there it says you give us consent to vaccinate your child. When you come to the clinic, you have to sign that consent once more, and Katie will tell you it's a very robust system. So when you come outside, they're checking IDs. You get inside, we're checking IDs. You get a wristband. If the child arrives and they do not have their parent with them, or they're an unaccompanied minor, they have to call over a clinical supervisor, so it's either myself or the public health nurse, because sometimes we're faxed in, emailed in that consent, or they have it in hand, and we call to verify that it's a valid consent if we haven't made prior arrangements with them. So there's several layers built in there to make sure that parents are given that informed consent.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Mike?
Yeah, what, you talked about the schools. What is our policy in the schools in the fall? Has that been decided, or are you talking to the Board of Ed?
So there was a policy that was set and it was put out as far as vaccination, or in general?
Yeah, and how it's going to be back for the kids in school and that.
So, couple layers to your question. So one, public schools, no mandatory vaccination. Some of our private schools, yes, they do have mandatory vaccination. In regards to masking, which is I think where we're going from our prior conversations, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any kids in school, so I'm not.
So masking is not up to us. The masking piece is actually set by the state, and right now the state is still requiring masking. Could that change? Absolutely, and we will, whatever the state mandates, we will follow along with it. And when parents call and they ask, and even when our superintendent asks me, like, what do you think? I don't know. I have to tell you, this is the second full week in July. It's too soon. Anything can happen between now and when school starts. We could have a really quiet, easy summer, and with our great vaccination numbers, the state says, okay, masks come off for the unvaccinated kids. The CDC could reverse their decision, and they say that as well. Or we could be dealing with the variants, and the variants complicate things, and we're seeing an increased burden on our acute care system. And they say keep them on. I will tell you, and Dr. Levin actually mentioned this as well, most of the new hospitalizations we're seeing are in young people. They are in our young people, and that is concerning to me, very much so. And the largest pool of people who are eligible to get the vaccine, meaning that they haven't had COVID, they haven't been vaccinated, they're kids, they're all under 12. So that's the population that we really need to get vaccinated, and without them being vaccinated, I call it the confetti effect. So we literally have a whole bunch of variables. Every variable is a piece of confetti. You have new variants. People who are unvaccinated, the mask just came off. It's warm weather, people are gathering. People are a little bit stir crazy, and everybody's engaging in lots of mass gatherings. You see it all the time. You take all these variables, you just threw it up in the air. Now you're asking your public health officials and your healthcare system to predict what's going to happen for a virus that we know as much as you. Like we're literally learning. We're literally building the road and driving on it at the same time. So I think anything can happen between now and then. And the most that we can do is really relay accurate information as we get it real time, that's science-based. So as we learn more and the science dictates it, we'll make those recommendations, whether masks on, masks off. So I know it's probably not the answer that you really wanted to hear, but it's the most accurate I can give you.
Your first answer was one I was just, it was whether it was mandatory or not mandatory in schools. It was my first one. So, you know, the other thing that we don't seem to talk about that much anymore is there are coming out with better treatments for people that have COVID. So I mean that is something we didn't have last year either. Is, you know, there's a lot of areas that have come up with ways, you know, the different various drugs and combining them in certain stages, so that it is, you know, it is a little bit better as far as when someone does get sick, because they're not, you know,
Yep.
right, first everyone's going on ventilators and they learn quickly that wasn't the best way, and so it has progressed to where there are some other things. And you know, I hope after this is all done, we really start looking at boosting immune systems and getting people stronger in this country, so that when they do get sick, they can fight it off. That's, you know, we have that health crisis in this country too.
Any other questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone. If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to take an exit. I've got a 5-year-old that's waiting for me. All right.
Locked in the car.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
And Katie, before we move on to the next one, just for those that are in the audience, that we're planning on item 11, which is Plan of Conservation and Development. I see we have our chairman of that subcommittee there, Mr. Puder. Thank you for being here. Because it's a lot of pages that our council would have to review, we're going to postpone that for 2 weeks for your guys' review, and then you can opine. And I know in speaking with Laura Regan, our CEO and town planner, and also Mr. Puder, and also former Mayor Furman, and Kathy Sutherland as well, is they will be coming back in 2 weeks. So I just want everybody to know that. So if you're watching or if you're in the audience, that will be taken off the agenda this evening for that. Okay?
Okay. So we move to item 6, 6A. There's a B also. Let's start with 6A. I'd like to move to approve the following appointments. For Town Council, Sal Rinkowitz, filling the vacancy left by Michael Gold, the term to be July 12th, 2021 through November 30th, 2021.
Second.
And real quick for the edification, I received a letter from Mike Gold. Dear Mayor Bass, I hereby resign my council seat effective today. I'm now focusing on furthering my education. That's great for Mr. Gold. Fortunately, my scheduled graduate classes conflict with town council meeting times. In good faith, I am vacating my seat for someone who can devote time and talent to the advancement and further achievements of the town of New Milford. It's truly been an honor to serve the voters of New Milford for the past 3.5 years. So we would love to thank former Councilman Gold for all of his efforts, and we appreciate that he's also going to be staying on the library construction committee, as he doesn't have classes.
On Tuesdays.
But that he does have classes for his graduate degree, and on Mondays. We understand and thank him for his service. So we have a motion on the floor and a second.
Is the road committee one part of this too, or no?
Pardon? No, we'll just do this one first.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Sal.
Congratulations, Sal.
And Randy, could you swear in Sal?
Raise your hands, sir.
No time like the present.
Do swear or affirm the case can be that you'll faithfully and fairly carry out the duties of your office to the best of your ability, so help you God.
Yes. Start from here. Thank you, sir. So now you can come up and take a seat.
Welcome to the council.
Welcome, Sal.
Thank you.
And Sal, there may be Mr. Gold's, Walter, is there one of his there? He can grab a sheet. And there's your council agenda.
Okay.
I want to thank you, Sal, for volunteering. And you bring, as was said before by Mr. Murphy, you bring a different perspective to our council. And we really appreciate that. So we're excited about that.
I'll do my best to help as much as I can.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay?
Okay, moving on. Move to appoint Move to approve the following appointment for Municipal Roads Committee, which would be Ellen Conklin, term from July 12th, 2021 through January 31st, 2024. She's filling a vacancy.
Second.
And for the council's edification, Ms. Conklin met with myself, Chairman of the Roads Committee, John Whitman, and Vice Chair, John Oates, and we're very excited that Ms. Conklin wants to be a part of the Municipal Roads Committee. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Move to approve the following reappointments. The Cable Advisory Council, George Fletcher, Gloria Arnold, and Patrick Sears, for a term of July 1st, 2020, 2020?
Will I get an extra year?
Yeah, well, it says 2020, maybe it need to be filled then, but I think we have to say 2021, don't we?
Yep, 2021
Since
to
that's, okay,
2022.
Still behind, but
Yep.
till January 31st, 2022.
Any discussion on the motion?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Move to reappoint the Economic Development Commission members Nancy Sagis and Arthur Whiteway for a term of December 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Mayor's comments.
Thank you, Katie. Real quick to piggyback first on both Dr. Levin and Lisa's comments in speaking with data numbers for the state of Connecticut, and these are in total cases that we've had throughout the pandemic. So you're looking at a year ago from March. This is by no means how many people have COVID currently, but this is how the state tracks it. Currently, the state of Connecticut, 320,179. Litchfield County is at 13,023, which was up 2 from Friday. Hospitalizations for the entire county of Litchfield is at 1, which is up 1 from Friday. New Milford, as Lisa said, we're on a very good roll so far, is at 2432, which is unchanged from Friday. And I know Lisa had given the vaccination total breakouts. The total vaccinations of July 9th, and this has a 14-day look back. First doses are at 17,863, which is at 66.64% of the total population. Total vaccination is at 16,481, which is 61.48%. So thank you to those that have chosen to get vaccinated as we're approaching those numbers. And as Mike has said, if you were to factor in those that have had the COVID as well, those numbers would be even higher. So we want to thank those, everyone that's gone through and decided to get vaccinated. And you can see that in our numbers. Next, our roads work continues on. Those roads that were completed so far in our road program for this year are West Street, Dorset Drive, North Valley Road, Burnham. Drainage work that's completed is Dorset, North Valley, Vista, White Swan, Gregory, New Preston, and Sawyer Hill. Road construction that's in progress right now is Vista, White Swan, Woodridge, Gregory, Station, Browns Forge, and Long Mountain Road. Chip sealing that's been done so far is Dawns Road, Heacock, Mallets, Upper Mallets, Wantonock, and Wildlife. Skim paving completed. Then it'll be to chip seal. There's Connolly and Outlook Drive. So I'd like to thank our contractors, also our DPW team, as we continue this progress and this work. Hopefully, weather permitting, we've been getting a lot of rain lately, so it kind of pushed back date. But we're hoping for a full completion of this program. And Jack, who's there, our DP director, may correct me. October 31st is our tentative day to shut the program down, but that's going to be weather dependent. So again, thank you to our roads team as we continue to move forward with that. Our town hall roof we've got our contracts, I believe, are with the contractor to be signed. Once he signs those, they'll stage construction, and then we'll begin the work for that. The town hall roof, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go to item 10. as I was at the Board of Education meeting, and due to costs that have increased and our state reimbursement funding that was less than what we thought when we started the project, they have partnered with us again to take some of their surplus, $250,000, to fund the additional costs for the New Milford High School roof replacement. Library construction, Katie and I meet with their construction team on Thursdays. The contractor continues with interior and exterior sheathing, HVAC, plumbing, roughing, and concrete pour they did of the mezzanine. I was given a tour on Friday, and when you go to the second floor where some of the tables and chairs are going to be, I had posted that on our social site. It's absolutely beautiful look. So when that's done, it's going to be truly amazing. I'd also like to thank Beth Solaris of the ESS team as they are partnering, as we're partnering with them, as they're the ones that are looking for additional substitute teachers for our district. So if you know someone or you are someone that would like to help our community and be a substitute teacher, please contact Beth. You can go to www.ess.com for more information. Also last week, due to weather, we had lots of times where nighttime, we had a lot of rumbling thunder and lightning, and those caused power outages. Pretty much Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was on the phone many times with and emails with our Eversource liaisons, and I cannot thank our first responders, as I say each time we go through these, enough for their boots on the ground efforts. Our New Milford Dispatch, our New Milford Police Department, our New Milford Fire, our DPW team, and those Eversource linemen that go there when times are tough and getting us back on the electric grid. So thank you for all of their help. Also, I'm pleased to let the town council know, as we have with the public, that we've started our Notify New Milford application. And this allows you to get alerted about emergencies and other important community news. And you can sign up for those alerts, and that's an add-on that we had in with our Everbridge system. So you can go on to our town page, www.newmilford.org. You can click on the top, or there's also an icon on the right-hand side of the first page. And also, for those who would like it in another language, we have about 13 different languages that you can select and put it on, and you will receive that message in that language that you so choose.
Very easy.
So I'd like to thank our New Milford Communications Supervisor, Christine Walsh, as she's been leading the charge and getting us up and running on that. So very excited about that. Also want to thank Chief Cerruto and our New Milford Police Department team as they came up with a new community partnership, and they have been issuing ice cream tickets. And so those tickets are for our young residents that do good deeds, or if they're caught, they issue a ice cream ticket. So
How young?
that's what I thought.
How young is young?
It can be as young as whatever the officer says. I know what you're saying. Right.
Young at heart.
So,
Yeah.
so you'll be seeing more of that, and thank you for Tasty Waves to help partner with the town as we do something really nice for our kids as they do good things for our community. Also want to congratulate our New Milford Fire semi-pro football team on their 44-7 win over the Granite State Destroyers. They're now 3-0. It's pretty awesome. So congratulations to them. 44-7.
Did the other team show up?
I think the 7. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Seems like they're not, so that's good. And then a couple of things that I would like the council to be made aware of is our New Milford Housing Affordable Plan. This is something that we talked about before. That's been the state has told us that we need to do, all the towns to do. So we hired a Gorman and York to actually come up with a housing plan. So I'd like to pass out the draft of the plan for your edification. And I'll give 3 over here.
Geez, Pete, I thought that was all one plan. You were going to read it. Oh, it would have been. Whoa.
4, 5. We got 5 there.
Randy, do you have one of these?
There. And nope, this is for the council to peruse. Also, the housing partnership is going to be. Did everybody get one? we have another copy? Yep.
Yes, please. Thank you.
And the housing partnership, let me get my paperwork together here, is going to be holding a public meeting. And I know Walter sits on this, so thank you, Walter. On July 21st, 2021, at the Loretta Brickley Conference Room at 6 p.m. For the purpose of discussing the affordable plan draft. This is also available for the public. You can go to www.milford.org, click on Community, it's on the right-hand side, so that you can either download or view the draft. And we're looking for the public's opinion when it comes to affordable housing here in New Milford. So please take a look, and please, especially council, men and women, we would love your opinion on that.
What room is that held in?
Brickley.
That's going to be the Loretta Brook,
Downstairs?
which is downstairs.
Way downstairs.
Also, as we are looking for affordable housing, I've asked Attorney DeBella to create a workforce housing trust fund. And this is for the council's edification, as this would have to be an ordinance that would have to be done by the council. And I appreciate Attorney DeBella's work on this so far. And we will be discussing this too at the Housing Partnership at their next meeting,
Which is?
I believe, the 16th. And you can go on the website and check that out as well. But this will obviously have to go to the town council after we have a public notification and hearing. But it's something for you to begin to take a look at, get your opinions as we begin this process. And what this housing trust fund can do is, we all aware, when you do look at the draft, you will notice that they are looking at the town's growth when it comes to people moving into town, even though we've had a great upswing, to continue to decline in different segments of our population. And that has to come to do with affordability. So we're looking at opportunities to provide that affordability to residents. And as you will read in here, one of the big ones is rents. And what this housing trust fund could do, if agreed to by the town council, is, and I'm making up a scenario as we go along, but you may have a single family, may have a single mom who has moved back in with her parents and has gone back to school. So now she has her degree and, God bless, now has a nice job. She wants to move out of her house and start her own household formation. But when she goes, there may be a deposit required of 1 to 2 to 3 months. She does not have that money access to do that. So this housing trust fund could be a way to provide that seed capital for her then to get that deposit, then to move in to her rental place and create her own residence and her own household formation. Because that, by state statute, should be put in an account that's segmented from the regular rent. When she decides, or he or she decides, to leave and move somewhere else, that money could go back into the fund and be replenished. That's one of many ways that we can look at this housing trust fund. But I'd like for you guys to take a look at it, and we can talk about it more in the next couple of weeks. The next homework for our council is the state of Connecticut passed our marijuana legislation that allows recreational marijuana to be used in the state of Connecticut. So there's been some towns that have already talked about what they want to do: Danbury, Newtown, Ridgefield. We in New Milford need to know what we want to do with recreational marijuana. How do we want to control it? How do we go about doing that? So I'm asking the council to take a look. This is from CCM. This talks about recreational use of marijuana. Also, in this next handout too is what the state of Connecticut looks like. And I think we need to, at the next town council meeting, I'm going to be putting this on the agenda for us to take a look at how we want to move forward. I'm also going to ask Town Attorney Randy DeBella to give us his opinion at the next meeting. We did have a meeting with Laura Regan, our zoning enforcement officer, and town planner. Zoning is also going to be looking at it in their lens as well, is marijuana legislation and also zoning requirements there. And lastly, some very good news for the town of New Milford was the American Rescue Funding, which is money that comes down to the town of New Milford through the federal government and the Biden administration. So I'm happy to report that the town of New Milford share will be $7,932,955.41. This includes the $5,206,556.98 that which is a state pass-through. Since we don't have a county form of government, they split up the county allocation to the towns. So that's why we have such a larger allocation. The $7,932,955.41 will be split into 2 payments. We've received our first payment. The second allocation of $3,966,477 is going to be scheduled for some time in the year 2022. The American Rescue Funds are being distributed separately to the boards of education through the Connecticut Department of Education and their Elementary Secondary School Relief Fund, ARP-ESSER. The town of New Milford Board of Education is entitled to their portion, which is totally separate than ours. So we got our 7.9. They're going to get $2,586,435,000 with $517,287,000 set aside for learning recovery. So great news for New Milford. Now, there are guardrails for this money. So first is you can't reduce taxes with it. That's in the American Relief Fund. The Western Council of Governments asked the attorney for Westcog to give us somewhat of an opinion, and that's Stephen Mednick. And basically, I'll hand this to the council. This will be coming in an email to you guys tonight, first thing in the morning. I'm going to read the very end. In short, without belaboring the point, I'd like to suggest a plain and simple rule of thumb, and this is about how we allocate the money. Follow the regular order pertaining to fund allocation in your community. If your municipality has a charter, you treat these funds as supplemental revenues or special funds. You should simply follow the provisions that addresses the treatment of such funds. If the charter is silent, it seems to me that these revenues should be reviewed and approved by the financial legislative authorities in order to legitimize the allocation. So Attorney DeBella, this is monies that are not budgeted. These are monies that basically are coming in as they would a grant. How would we treat this as far as approvals for expenditures of monies, in your opinion?
It would simply be treated as part of a revenue, its own revenue line, but it has to be appropriated. So it would have to be by way of supplemental appropriation, just as it would be if it was from another fund. That's how it's handled.
And for the edification of the public, that would mean once it's decided how to expend these funds, town council would have to approve these, and so would the Board of Finance.
Town council makes the, just under our charter, town council makes a recommendation to the Board of Finance in order to authorize the expenditure. So the same protocol would apply. It's not a windfall that you just write checks on. It has to be part and parcel of municipal funds, because it is municipal funds once it gets to us.
Thank you, Randy. And the state, how they're treating it, so we can all, the council can kind of understand some of the thought process in this. So what the state is doing, the first key for them, so there's going to be 5 keys that I'm going to read to you, which they're looking at how to use these funds. The first is to defeat COVID-19 by maintaining strong testing and vaccination programs, supporting a continued supply of PPE, maintaining their nationally leading support programs for the most vulnerable residents living in long-term care facilities, supporting local health departments, because defeating the virus is the only way to ensure other investments will pay dividends. The second is investing in the future with 21st century upgrades and investments in cities and towns, expanding access to high-speed internet, supporting families from the start, supporting the recovery of nonprofits through the pandemic, and addressing the criminal justice impacts. The third key is creating a more affordable Connecticut through providing enhanced child care opportunities for residents, assisting institutions of higher education, providing students in our colleges and universities, which is state but not local. The fourth area of investment is to make the state's economic growth work for everyone by restoring jobs, rebuilding our economy, returning to growth by focusing on workforce development, small business supports, investing in innovation, communities, and sustainable products. The fifth key is the state itself. So they're going to be giving resources to enable Connecticut to modernize and ease delivery of services, particularly in health and human services. So I think as a council, we need to be very cognizant of these guardrails, so to speak, on how we're going to look at appropriating funding. Also, on the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, here's some American Rescue Plan as they talk about this. They recommend 3 principles that should undergird all state responses to the pandemic. So this is something I think we all need to be cognizant of. Target aid to those most in need of, due to the COVID-19 and consequent economic crisis. Strengthen revenue systems to sustain transformative long-term investments in minorities, immigrants, and low-income communities. Localities should apply these principles in the policy choices they will make in the coming weeks and months and spend the fiscal recovery funds. Also, part of this is you can invest in people to improve public safety, investing in equity-enhancing broadband, clear water infrastructure projects. States and localities should sustain many of these investments with their own funds after the federal funds are spent out. So we need to be very cognizant as we use these funds. Are we going to plan for it? If this is something that's going to be operational, then we know that will impact future budgets. So that's something that we all need as a council to let the public understand. Policymakers charged with spending the fiscal record should seek input from residents, especially the communities most harmed by the pandemic. Committing to a robust community engagement process is, as I use an example, as Nevada. So what I'm going to be asked the town council is with your endorsement that we will hold public hearings so that we can hear from the public meetings, I would say, Randy, right?
Yes.
So that we can hear from the public what they think we should be using these fundings for. So with your approval, I will set those up. And then it talks about other things which you can do. It includes an array of emergency aid to reduce the extreme hardship many people and businesses are experiencing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is also used to help eligible people pay rent, afford food, or access child care, or to improve the supply of child care. Also, it can be used to respond to the pandemic and its negative economic impacts. Restore cuts to public services caused by the pandemic, induced revenue losses, and avoid additional cuts. Good news is the taxpayers fully approved our budget, so that's great news. We can also invest in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And again, as I said before, you cannot use this to offset taxes.
Can you go rainy day fund it all with it?
What's that?
Can you put
You
something
cannot.
aside?
No. So you have to spend the money. And so what I'm asking the town council is kind of ask yourself what you think this money would be important for. This is a true gift to our town that can help us in so many ways. We're also going to ask the public, because this isn't budgetary dollars where it's already been approved by the public, where we've had a referendum. So this truly is something that we could help our community in so many ways, but we want to hear from the public. So I'll be setting up those meetings. Mary Jane?
Yeah, this is great. I was actually going to ask you about what was happening with the American Rescue Plan. The eviction moratorium is about to end.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people, that have barely scraped by with COVID are really going to be in dire need of housing and money to pay, back rent so that they and their families are not evicted. So I think that might be a really worthwhile, way to spend some of this money.
Absolutely. Chris?
Question on this and then a couple of the other items.
Absolutely.
Is there a deadline on when these funds have to be spent by?
So we have, I believe, 4 years to do these.
So you can't put aside a fund and fund something for 20 years with that money, no? So 4 years, that's it. Okay.
Then we could adjust our budget for next year and use this money to, no? You can't lower
You
your
can't
budget.
use it for tax relief.
And just on the workforce housing thing, I think this is great. I think supporting workforce housing in this town is important. Organizations like Habitat for Humanity do a great job on that, and we need to do more. So, of course, the devil's in the details, so we'll read up on that.
And kind of follow up a little bit too, Chris, I've asked State Representative Buckby, so what really is affordable housing? So the state looks at affordable housing as if it's deed restricted. So I think that's wrong.
Yep.
And I asked Bill to talk about that. And the reason being is if you have someone that's come in, scraped together all the money they had to buy their first house or their first condominium, and now their place is deed restricted where it only goes so much. Well, now you've kind of hurt their American dream. They don't have the ability to sell that to make the profit to go buy their second home or their third home. And also the affordability, I think New Milford's housing stock is way more affordable than Lower Fairfield County. But because they're not deed restricted, they don't count that, which I think is wrong. So I've asked State Representative Buckby to kind of take a look at that. How could we measure it a different way?
Right.
We're not gonna touch it up there.
Well, figure we should.
Figure
we can come up with our own metric, maybe.
Figure we
We
should
can have our
ask.
metric, but we still have to meet the state requirements. of certain percentage.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other thing, you mentioned Eversource, and maybe these small storms, you can't tell, but I know a year ago when we had that horrible tropical storm roll through, you were suffering just horrible command and communication issues with Eversource. Do you get any sense, are these storms at all enough to tell you, hey, they've got their act
So I
straight down a
can
little bit, or-
tell you, and I'm sure Mike, who's in the audience tonight, can opine, they've been much quicker when it comes to communication.
Okay.
Which is great. Now the test will be, and I'm hoping, knocking on wood, that we don't have something like Tropical Storm Isis, which affected all sorts of places. Because right now, if we had like the last few storms, New Milford in this area has been the one with the leading amount of outages. So they're able to take reinforcements and quickly come here. But if we have a bigger event as we had the last time, it's really going to stretch their resources thin. But I have to say, their communication with us has been a lot better. Plus, they've added new technologies too.
Good.
So.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you.
They learned a lesson.
Hopefully.
That's good.
And lastly is I just want to make sure that the council is aware. There's been some information that's been passed around both on social media and everywhere about Century Brass and about whether this is considered a transfer station. There was wood that we put in there from Tropical Storm Isis. And I've asked Mike Boucher, Mike, could you come up for a second? As we could just inform the council and those that are watching. Mike, could you edify the town council on the real way we've handled these things?
Yeah, so up until 2017, we always, whenever we picked up a tree off the side of the road or whatever, we brought it back to the facility at 6 Youngs Field, and we had what we called a resident pile. That was the amount of stores that we had for wood.
Mike, I'm sorry, the what pile?
Resident pile. We call it the
Oh.
resident pile. A
The
resident
wood
can
pile.
come and
Oh, the
take
wood
any
that
wood
you
away
can come
from
and
there.
take.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So in 2017, our facility is not getting any bigger, but our structure was. So we approached the mayor at the time, asked him if we could use Century Brass for that pile.
And what mayor was that?
It was
Mike?
Mayor Groenbach. He gave us full approval, no problem. We moved the resident pile over there, and that's all we ever put there was the same resident pile that we've had. I mean, I was hired in 2000, we had it long before that. So through the years, we've had all these big storms, hurricanes, tropical storms, microbursts, macrobursts. Through all these, we've had permission from the state or from the DEP to store the wood there for temporary periods until we can process it. Up until very recently now, we just got our own bucket truck. We have a greater demand, or we need a bigger place to store the wood, basically. So we reached out to the DEP, to a gentleman named Frank Gagliardo, asked him what we needed to do. He told us, and we did it. So we have it's called a satellite drop facility. So all we're allowed to put there is clean, unprocessed wood. Basically what we cut down, what we pick up off the sides of the road. That's all we can put there. We can put up to 3,000 cubic yards of unprocessed and up to 2,000 yards of processed wood. So if it's chipped, we can put 2,000 yards of it there. That's the extent of it. I mean, we've never been doing anything illegal there. We've always just, done what we had to do. So all these rumors that are going around, they're just that. They're just rumors. I mean, we've always had a transfer station license that's covered pretty much everything we do to that point. So.
Are you implying something on social media is not true?
Absolutely.
Mike, I just want to ask questions. So
Sure.
all of the wood that you have put over there, or are still, that's DEP, deep, is said, go for it.
Right, we're
Okay.
right up to speed where we need to be with DEP. We've got no issues with DEP.
And they are
That
the
large
arbiter.
pile that was just removed from there, that was all covered up until December of this year. So we're actually still covered under that emergency permit.
And,
So.
Thanks.
and Mike, just for education, as Councilman Cosgrove said, when we have an unfortunate instance such as Tropical Storm Isis, when FEMA becomes involved, then we have the ability to put it where we need to put it, and then FEMA then comes and checks it, and we go through all of that
Correct.
as well.
The last big hurricane we had, I don't remember the name of it, I don't remember the year, but that was our staging area. If you remember, FEMA was in town with their own people, picking up the wood all over town, and that was the staging area. With Isaias, we reach out to DEP, we tell them that's what we're gonna do, and we get a letter saying, okay, and that's the way it works. So, yeah, we've never been doing it wrong.
Thank you, Mike.
So I have a
Mary
question.
Jane?
Where does this wood go eventually? Like, what do you do
Well,
with it?
if it's from a DEP, we have to send it to, it gets ground up and it gets sent to a DEP certified recycling facility. Like the last group, they took to a place where it's gonna get mulched and given out as mulch or sold as mulch. But it has to be a DEP certified facility that it goes to. We take pictures, we take measurements, we have all this whole form that we have to fill out that goes to the DEP. They have to approve everything before we can move on it. So, including the contract, like we had to put it out to bid, get a contractor. That contractor has to have all their things in order before they'll allow us to do anything with it.
Go.
And Mike, if a person from the public had a question about this, certainly they could call you and get the proper facts about it.
Anybody who sees me
As
post on
opposed
social
to
media,
it being circulated for the untruths.
Absolutely.
Just call the proper authorities and they will.
put my name and my phone number right there for anybody who wants to call.
Right.
The phone's right on my desk. I'll pick it up.
And that would clear up any untruths and they would know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It would kind of be nice if they did that, so you wouldn't have to spend time away from your family here tonight.
We do what we have to do.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Set with Mayor's comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Lots of great news. Exciting.
Homework.
And homework, yes, we have lots of homework.
Homework, yeah.
Nick will try to get to the POCD first. Moving on to item number 8. I move that we set a date for the public hearing for the youth agency's ordinance change for Monday, July 26th, 2021 at, what time would you like, Mayor?
6:45.
6:45 PM.
Second.
And we have our youth agency director, Jason O'Connor here. Jason, could you come up and tell the council why we're doing this ordinance change?
Do we have a second on that?
Yeah, we have a second,
Oh,
Walter.
okay, thank you.
What was that, Mayor? Sorry.
Jason, I was hoping you could,
No, I just didn't hear the last comment. I'm sorry.
I was just telling that it was actually the second was made by Councilman.
Got it. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Town Council. So essentially, this revision brings the youth agency, represents New Milford's Youth Service Bureau, into conformity with state law and regulations for youth service bureaus. It aligns us. It allows us to maintain our current as well as go after new state funding. And again, these funding opportunities are for state youth service bureaus, and more specifically, it allows us to continue our programming. That's really it.
And I know in speaking with Jason, we're very excited. Through his leadership, we're looking at bringing in a new model for the youth agency. When we spoke before, we were looking at COVID and what that's going to happen to our youth. One of the things that we had talked about is we feel that due to the learning model, a lot of people being at home, there's going to be a lot of depression, a lot of isolation, a lot of those things. So I'd asked Jason, what could we do? And Jason came up with a therapeutic model. Jason could talk a little bit about it. It's really going to help our youth.
Yeah, essentially, everyone knows the last year has been extremely tough on not only us adults, but youth in general. So working with Mayor Pete, we looked at how can we prepare our youth coming out of this, and building on their resiliency, strengths-based model. So we looked at offering no-cost counseling services through the New Milford Youth Agency, and the YSB grant through the state of Connecticut, as well as a couple other opportunities we're looking into, will allow us to expand on our services and go down that counseling and therapeutic model, as well as our normal pro-social leadership opportunities, our child care that we offer, our oversight of the Juvenile Review Board. This is just an additional resource that the town and the town's Youth Service Bureau can offer to our youth. So again, it's the revision is to maintain our current programming, our current state funding, as well as expand our funding, or expand our programmings rather, and going down that counseling route. Because in doing the needs assessment, in doing our homework and research, you can go anywhere and there's waiting lines. There's I just took a phone call from a parent. She's like, I can't get in anywhere. How can you help? And we're not saying we're the answer. Certainly not. We do intakes and we measure that need, but it's an additional service to the community. So again, this opportunity and realignment will allow the existing programming as well as new endeavors by the agency to continue and basically create.
Mary Jane?
So another great area where we could use the American Rescue Plan.
That's what I was thinking in the crowd.
So, let's go for it.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Jason.
Thanks,
you.
Jason.
Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Jason.
Item number 9, move to set public hearing on Mud Pond Road Bridge Design for Monday, August 9th, 2021 at 6:50 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. And we have our DPW Director, Jack Healy, here. Jack, if you could just briefly, I know it's in the packet, I believe it's in the packet, if you could just kind of tell the council the meeting that you did have with the residents and with the Scenic Roads Committee for Mud Pond.
Yeah, we had a series of like 3 or 4 meetings. The members of the committee were David Melton of Mud Pond Road, Kathleen Nelson of Mud Pond Road, Councilman Esposito, Paul Murphy, Planning Commission Chairman, Frank Wargo, the Economic Development Commission, and then myself. We met 3 or 4 times, went over the design of the bridge. We took into account, there was a design, and we just talked about what did the residents want to see. We made some modifications, made some proposals. I think we've been able to accommodate most of the requests And some are just engineering-wise, we have to meet certain standards with the state because we do have a grant, but I think we've been able to modify it to make most people happy.
Good job,
And,
Jack.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you to the committee. And per our scenic road ordinance, right, Randy, the next step in this is to set the public hearing, and then the council then approves precisely the plan. Any questions for Jack?
Just a comment.
That's next.
The residents up there were really terrific.
Oh, yeah.
When we were working together with them. Kathleen Nelson pointing out, and I think that many people feel that when you make road improvements, people see the road improvement, they seem to step on the gas a little harder as they're going over that new road improvement. So I know Jack made them feel very comfortable up there. There would be enough signage to slow people down, to make them realize that they're not on a racetrack, and to also to protect the aesthetics of the area were very important to Dave and some of the other residents. Because we don't live there, we have to take those opinions and those comments in as we do these projects. And I think you were able to do a great job in making them happy and accommodating the residents. So I want to thank you, Jack. You did a great job.
Thanks.
Randy?
Question for Mr. Director. Jack, is this the report? The report was conclusion of your committee?
Yeah, it should be dated July 9th.
Okay.
So this is your entire report?
Yeah, just a summary of what we did.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Item number 10, I'd like to move to approve a Board of Education request to move no more than $250,000 from the capital reserve account to fund supplemental financials needed for the New Milford High School roof replacement project.
Second.
Thank you, and you'll see in your packet from our Board of Ed Chairman, Wendy Fallenbach, that at the last Board of Education meeting, I was there as well, that the Board of Education approved the use of $250,000 from their capital reserve so that we can get this high school roof taken care of. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you.